excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
Bill and Ted Face the Music is the third installment of the most bodacious trilogy of all time. Bill S. Preston and Theodore Logan are now sad old men whose personal lives are falling apart, and then they get another call from the future to sing another song to save the entire universe from collapse. Only problem is, they can't write a song to save their lives, so as the old saying goes, if you want to do something right, you got time travel to steal it from yourself. This is an interesting franchise to kind of get back into revival game. The first two movies were both fun, cheesy adventures that doubled as massive time capsules of a bygone era, filled to the brim with tacky fashion, hairstyles, rock music, and homophobia.
Back.
Even so, they never really reached the heights of other comparable blockbusters around that time frame. They've always felt more like cult classics than big franchises. I mean, they had cartoons and cereal and stuff, but at the same time you wouldn't see them in like the National Film Registry or something. Even so, it's still beloved enough by people that both the actors and screenwriters were on board to get this film made for a good part of the decade. Yet despite that, it's been stuck in development hell due to some sort of copyright complication or something. I'm guessing the combination of that getting somehow resolved, as well as Keanu being a pretty big star, was what pushed this into finally getting made territory. And now the wait is finally over, and at a perfect time too. We could use some positivity. Now that I've finally faced the music, I wouldn't necessarily call it excellent, but it's not completely bogus either. It's station, I guess. Plot-wise, it has more in common to the ticking clock time travel adventure of the first movie than it does the ever-loving bonkers heaven and hell journey that the second one presents.
How about a kiss? For your dear old granny.
It's also kind of a soft reboot too, as half the movie puts the focus on Bill and Ted's daughters going on their own adventure to help save their dads. Along the way, the past and future collide, historical figures are brought along, and Death himself returns again. Yeah!
You might be a king or a little street sweeper, but sooner or later you dance with the Reaper.
So on a story level, I'm not opposed to any of this. I like all the general ideas. I like how it puts more of a focus on their family life. I like how their wives, children, and even Ted's dad get a certain amount of focus. The concepts do have potential on paper, but in execution, it doesn't quite pan out. One of the main appeals of this franchise is the likability of the duo and their general aloofness to all the strange situations they find themselves put upon. And Alex and Keanu are back, alright. I mean, it is nice to see them together again, which we haven't seen since Freaked.
Welcome to hell, Rick. Shake.
No thanks. I don't plan on staying long.
While they still do a decent job, especially as other versions of themselves, there is definitely more of an awkwardness to seeing them as slow middle-aged dudes than the fast-happening teenagers of yesteryear. But obviously everyone had to have been aware of this, so they do the best they could. The other actors do a decent enough job. Their daughters are fine for what they're given, although I kinda wish there were some more scenes of them hanging out before their adventure. Like have them act and behave in very Bill and Ted ways before they get thrown into a "we gotta save our dads" quest. Maybe it was slowed the movie down, I don't know, I kinda wish they had more chemistry with each other. Kristen Schell's kind of an odd choice to play the daughter of George Carlin. I like that Ted's dad is the same actor. I like that the princesses are never the same actors. And once again, William Sadler as Death steals the movie. I think one of the biggest detriments I could say for this is that it's just not really funny. Some of Bill and Ted's lines do get a moderate chuckle every once in a while, but otherwise there's not a whole lot of humor I got out of this. There was this murderous robot assassin character whose gimmick is that he's awkward and polite, and that's just kind of it. He's played by NoHo Hank from Barry, which should be a recipe for excellence, but the jokes he was given had kind of a bogus delivery. I make no apologies for whatever I say. Also, while I do like the ideas that the movie proposes, the storyline itself feels very meandering. Most of the film is Bill and Ted going to a different year, only to reach some sort of dead end. Their daughters kind of have a more active plotline, but I think where it kind of falters is in its direction. One of the things I liked about the other two is how breakneck and energetic their pacing and filmmaking are, both of which feel oddly absent in this. This same director also did Galaxy Quest, which proves to me he is capable of making goofily innocent science fiction comedies. But I was a little more bored at parts than I was entertained. It's very standardly shot with not a whole lot of imagination in sight. Some of the time paradoxes are sort of fun visually, and I like how hell looks, but I'm not a fan of the very sleek, modern Apple story design of the future. I wish they stuck to the dated neon colors of the past. I liked it better when it was old. The visual effects are not great, but I wouldn't necessarily harp on them too much, as this is a goofy comedy and it doesn't really have the highest budget, though I wish they used more practical sets instead of relying on green screen most of the time. There's this one shot of Bill and Ted walking around the future, and it looks like a PS3 cutscene. I just found it a little too distracting. The makeup is surprisingly really good, the robot guy looks neat, as do the various Bills and Teds they come across. I also like the ending. While it doesn't really solve all the questions I've had about the future realities, like are they changed or not, it works in the very who cares, let's just end on an upbeat note kind of way. While the journey there was honestly sort of lacking, it did leave me with a smile at the end. That quickly went away as soon as I checked the news, but that is more than what most comedies do these days. So my general thoughts on this are mixed to say the least. It's too sluggish and not funny enough for me to really want to rewatch, but it has heart to it. I've seen stuff this year like Scoob, for example, where it's an old property being revived for a newer generation by people who seemed respected and had good intentions. But unfortunately, it got put through the corporate ringer and came out as a bland, soulless product. This movie, I may find a little on the bland side, but it's not soulless. The people making this wanted to make this. I think a better comparison to this is not Scoob, but Bad Boys for Life. Both films kind of fall under a lot of similar issues, but the main difference is I like spending time with Bill and Ted more than I do Martin and Will. And in the end, I guess that's what matters. So if you like Bill and Ted, if you enjoyed the first two movies, you might enjoy this, but I would set my expectations low. Otherwise, it exists and we can party on. 5 out of station.